field the questions from all across there, but FFA is a great leadership program. I had a young lady at a town hall in Kansas City asked me over the weekend, really Friday, how we could make FFA more effective. And I really want you all to be agricultural evangelists across the country. You know the programs, and we need great communicators over the food safety, over how our production of our food capacity, and many other things is conducted. There's a lot of misinformation, as you might know, across the nation over some of these issues. So you all can be truth tellers and tell the great story of the productive capacity of agriculture all across the country. And interestingly, you and your age probably has more credibility than I do as Secretary of Agriculture, really saying what's going on out there. So particularly your age, the millennials, a lot of interest in food safety, food quality, field to farm, those kind of things. So I hope you'll be real advocates. The FFA program is probably the best that I'm aware of in our schools and our youth training today. And I know I've been to your meetings. I see how you're led, and I applaud those leaders who work with you on the ground in every school system across the country. And Mark, I want to thank you for the FFA organization. We've got a vibrant FFA in Georgia, as you know, and I've been to Tennessee where they claim to have a large group as well. And I know they're very active all across the country. So we look forward to hearing with you and engaging with you guys today over your questions. And so let's get started. Mark, you ready?
I am. Thank you, Secretary Perdue. And let me, on behalf of National FFA, offer our sincere thanks to you, as well as congratulations to you on your confirmation as Secretary of the United States Department of Agriculture. We are, of course, at this teletown hall, the first of what we hope will be many opportunities for FFA members from around the country to be able to discuss topics directly with you, Mr. Secretary. And as many of you know, my name is Mark Peschel. I am the CEO of the National FFA organization. We are very pleased to be joined by a number of students, FFA members and ag education students from around the country. In the room with me today are a number of young people in their blue jackets from here in Indiana. We also have young people in FFA chapters and ag education classes joining us from around the country, and we're going to give those young people an opportunity, Mr. Secretary, to introduce their chapters to you. I would like to start, if we could, by asking representatives from Eau Claire FFA in Wisconsin, if we could ask one individual from the chapter to come in front of the microphone or the computer, whichever is the case, introduce yourself, introduce your chapter, perhaps tell us the number of members in your chapter and an interesting fact about what you're doing in FFA. So let's go to Wisconsin for our first introduction.
Okay, Michaela, you need to introduce yourself.
I'm Michaela Johnson. I'm from the Eau Claire FFA chapter in Wisconsin.
How many students?
There's like 30 members here in the Eau Claire FFA chapter.
And what else did you want her to answer?
How many members are in your chapter?
30.
Very good. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Let's now go to New Hampshire and ask a representative from the Dover FFA chapter to do that same thing. Introduce yourself, your chapter, the number of members, and maybe an interesting fact about your chapter.
All right. Hi, I'm Lydia Perry, and I'm from the Dover FFA chapter. We have about 35 members in our chapter, and we have our officer team here with us today. An interesting fact is that the first potato in New Hampshire was grown in Londonderry.
Very good. Well, welcome to you from New Hampshire. Let's go. Go ahead, Mr. Secretary.
I said, looks like girls rule in New Hampshire.
Let's go to the midsection of the country, to our FFA members in Hudson, Iowa. if you would as well introduce your chapter.
My name is Maria Geyser, and I'm the chapter president. The Hudson FFA chapter has 43 members. And a fun fact about us is that we were established in 1932, and we've had 5 FFA advisors.
That's terrific. Thank you, Hudson, Iowa. Now we're going to go just a little bit west of there to Greeley, Colorado, and the Greeley FFA chapter. Do we have Greeley, Colorado?
Okay, see if you can talk. All right.
There you go. Go ahead. Well, we're clearly having, I'm sorry, some technical difficulties and not able to hear Greeley. We'll come to you. And let's while you're figuring out that technical issue, let's go to where the secretary is located in Leesburg, Virginia. And Mr. Secretary, I'm going to ask the members their chapter.
Who's going to speak up for Leesburg?
Hi, my name is Valerie Knowles, president of the Monroe Technology Center chapter. We have around 60 members, and a fun fact is we are the last remaining FFA chapter in Loudoun County.
Well, we hope that we're able to change that factor. We have any with the audio in Colorado.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
My name is Alan Olmedo Soto. I'm the current chapter president, and we are from Greeley, Colorado, which has a total of 354 members, and we are the largest chapter in Colorado.
Terrific. And I am very pleased today to be joined here by all 6 of our national FFA office. I would ask you perhaps if one of the chapters put your microphones on mute until you ask the question. And I'm going to call to the front of the room our National FFA President, David Townsend, to formally introduce Secretary Perdue. David?
Sonny Perdue came by his discovery of the agriculture industry the traditional way, by growing up on a family farm in Bon Air, Georgia. Now, the work ethic and everything that was learned on that family farm served him well throughout the rest of his life. He served our country in the U.S. Air Force, rising to the rank of captain, earned a doctor of veterinary medicine from the University of Georgia, worked as a veterinarian in North Carolina, served as a member of the Georgia State Senate for 11 years, and as a 2-term governor of Georgia. Following his career in politics, he also had a successful career in agribusiness, working with commodities and transportation enterprises all across the southeastern United States. Everything that he learned throughout his career serves him so well in the role he now fills as the principal advocate for the American agriculture industry and all that it serves. On April 25th, 2017, Sonny Perdue became the 31st United States Secretary of Agriculture. And as one of his first principal activities, he joins us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue.
Well done, Mr. President. Just like I would expect from a great FFA member, and I hope you all saw some tweets last week of how well the FFA was represented by your national vice president, Valerie, from Minnesota. She did a great job fielding questions from the press, as well as fielding questions from the boss, the President Trump, as he asked her about various things. She was right there at the round table last Tuesday, and it went a long way to get those blue and gold jackets known across the country. So I'm fortunate. I know about the power of FFA, but young people, as you saw that introduction, that's what FFA represents to me. The ability to stand up without notes, do a little study ahead of time, and be able to do a very great, succinct introduction. That's the kind of leadership I expect from FFA. So I look forward to our conversation today. So Mark, I'll let you moderate.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And of course, as I mentioned, we have a whole room full of young people here from the great state of Indiana, from a number of chapters. So I'm going to start our questions right here in this room. And because I've got a great group right here in front, I'm going to ask the first person whose hand goes up to come up front and ask a question of Secretary Perdue. Please. And if you would be so kind as to state your name, your year in the chapter, and your chapter name.
Hello, Mr. Secretary, excuse me. My name is Callista. I'm from the Greenfield Central FFA chapter. This is my 3rd year in our chapter. And my question to you is, where do you think the future of agriculture will go?
The future of agriculture, is that the question?
Yes.
I think, again, it is bright. And as I said last week, the hope of America, when I see young people like Valerie and your president introduced me today, as well as all you young people across the country, I am excited. I'm optimistic about the possibilities of American agriculture. And the very fact of the technology changes that we've seen over the last 50 or 75 years, about agriculture has changed so much. When we look at just all the things that it's involved in, not only from food and fiber, but from energy production, pharmaceuticals, and other things. And there's an exciting future out there. And I'm glad that members of the FFA are learning about all the career opportunities. I hope you'll continue to pursue a science-based education, technology-based, a business-based education. All those skills are needed in the future of agriculture. There's just so many opportunities in agriculture today. I hope that you young people who are getting a great start in FFA will explore those as you continue your education.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you have a great group of young people with you there in Virginia. And let's take our next question from the Leesburg FFA chapter. Yes, go right ahead, young lady.
Hi, my name is Valerie Knowles from the Monroe Technology Center chapter, and my question is, why did the USDA drop plans to test for the Monsanto weed killer glyphosate when they knew it had been found in honey and oatmeal?
Yes, those are questions that I'm going to have to go study about. You know that it's my 5th day on the job. But again, I know those were issues that were made out there. We certainly, one of the jobs of USDA, along with EPA, along with the Department of Federal FDA, is to make sure that our products that we use on our farms are safe and that we use in that. Oftentimes, people refer to science-based. Science is not totally unanimous or consensual in some of the conclusions, that we continue to look for opportunities or look for reasons to make recommendations. But I can assure you that the USDA will make recommendations over products used in conjunction with the Environmental Protection Agency and with FDA to make sure that our people are safe, our food is safe, and those other animals and environment that we have out there, we're stewards of to guard very carefully.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Secretary, just a follow-up to that. Of course, in FFA, we often talk to our students about STEM education and the importance of science, technology, engineering, math. And as we talk about a topic like that, it sounds as though that simply solidifies the importance of that kind of an educational program. And I'd be interested in your comments on your view of STEM education, and particularly as it relates to topics such as the one you just addressed.
Mark, I tried to mention earlier that STEM education is really a vital component of agricultural education. We know that it takes science. We're dealing with biological organisms and plants and animals. That's the biology part. That's the science part. There's a lot of mechanical in there as well. We have a lot of engineering and mechanical and technology. All that, irrespective of what area of agriculture you go in, those are 4 foundational needs of good education that it takes to be successful in the career of agriculture, almost in any area. So science, technology, engineering, and mechanical is very, very important that we move forward and I hope our FFA members will understand and they pursue those education. They'll not back away from those tough courses, but really welcome and receive those well, knowing that that'll be a part of their future.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Let's go to the dairy state of Wisconsin, to the Eau Claire chapter, and ask if there is a member there that has a question that they would like to pose to Secretary Perdue.
My question would be, what is your name? I'm Jason Schieffer. I am the president of the Eau Claire FFA, and this is my 3rd year in FFA. And my question would be, what is your department doing to help Wisconsin dairy farmers that, as of today, do not have contracts and have nowhere that milk that is produced today to go?
Your great question, obviously very pertinent to Wisconsin and possibly upper state New York. As you know, sadly, Canada changed some of the regulations and rules and pricing mechanisms that precluded this group of Wisconsin dairymen who were selling into the ultra filtered market in Canada to lose their market, specifically the Grassland Cooperative that had been designed and come together to sell the ultra filtered milk there. Our people at USDA tell me that we're using all the options at our disposal regarding helping them to find alternative procurement opportunities of their milk. And certainly I think that day was today, so we hope that's taking place. Obviously USDA has some capacity to purchase milk and cheese for our school programs and other nutritional programs. So we'll use every opportunity, every tool at our disposal in order to take care of that. I was frankly very, very pleased with the fact that our president sent a strong signal, even though there weren't a large number of dairymen involved. If you're one of those dairymen, it's pretty important. I grew up on a dairy farm, and those cows didn't take a vacation. They couldn't just say, well, they don't need any milk next week, so we won't be milked. It's a 365-day a year operation, as you well know. So the very crisis and anxiety over farm families not having a place to go with their milk was very real. But the president sent Canada a strong message that if you want to really discriminate against our dairy farmers in this area that have been sending milk to your Canadian consumers, manipulating those issues, then we will slap a countervailing tariff on your timber that's been coming into our country. And that's exactly what he's done. Hope this can get resolved. I'm going to be meeting with the Canadian officials very soon, and I'm hoping our USTR, the trade representative, our Secretary of Commerce, and I can persuade the Canadians to not restrict the inflow of U.S. milk into their country.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for your leadership on that. I know that as I have spoken with folks in these states, a big issue, and thank you for the work that you and USDA are doing in that regard. Let's skip back over to the New England states, and if we could hone in on the Dover FFA chapter and ask for a member there to introduce themselves and also ask a question of Secretary Perdue. Dover FFA.
Hi, my name is Trina Vaz. I've been in FFA for 3 years. I'm here from the Dover chapter. I've lived all over the country, and I've lived on a farm and a small ranch before. And my question to you is, what do you think is the biggest problem in agribusiness, and how do you think FFA can help?
And what was the second part of the question? I know the biggest problem and what the second part?
Agribusiness, and how do you think FFA can help?
Okay. Obviously, the biggest problem is sustained profitability, and that's where USDA comes into a large part. That's where the Farm Bill comes into a large part. We've got a safety net. We know that across the country, our grain prices are lower, cattle prices are lower, and you're really below break-even prices in some places. But that's what agriculture is all about. We've existed that way for many, many years over the cyclical nature of pricing. And one of my goals would be to even that out, where our farmers and producers, we could remove the obstacles where they could have a consistent, profitable situation. The challenge is sometimes when it gets so profitable, we overproduce, and that's kind of where we are today. We've got a worldwide supply of grain that's more than we can consume here in the United States. But my role as USDA Secretary is to go around the world and to sell those products that our great productive people in agriculture, yes, have grown. So we want to do that, whether it's cattle, whether it's grains, or other types of products that we grow and do such a good job doing. Once again, as I think as we build a better demand base here domestically, I think our FFA students can be really, really helpful in telling the great story of agriculture. I told the president last week that the United States agriculture is the best example I know of the productive manufacturing capacity of small business people on family farms across the country. You look at what's happened over the last 75, 100 years, it's absolutely amazing to feed all of our people with the numbers of farmers we have and to feed much of the world. So tell that story time and time again, get outside. Unfortunately, in agriculture, many times, we just want to get and speak ourselves in an echo chamber. The guys in the blue jackets and the gold, we know that. You know that. We need to get outside. How about create a speakers bureau at your FFA and ask these civic organizations to invite your members to come speak. It's a great experience for you, and it's very informative for them. So I'd love to see FFA chapters all over the country create speaker bureaus where they can go and communicate the great message of agriculture out to society at large. And I'm telling you, when you go, you're always more effective than I am. They expect me to tell that story, but when you go and tell it in such a way as you've been trained in the FFA, it makes everybody. You're very credible, and it makes everybody. That's why I was so proud of Valerie last week as she stood in that camera, told the great story of agriculture. She was 10 times more helpful and more informative than I was.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Secretary. And you know, I think it's a testament to the efficiency of the American farmer. When I was in FFA, every American farmer fed something like 56 people, and that number now is 155 people. And so American agriculture continues to be depended upon to feed the world. So thank you for those comments. Let's go to the Midwest U.S., to Hudson, Iowa. If there is a member there that would like to introduce themselves and pose a question to Secretary Perdue, please.
Hi, I'm Maria Geisler, and I'm the Hudson FFA chapter president. I've been in the chapter for 4 years, and my question is about infrastructure. So in Iowa and the surrounding states, we're heavily reliant on the Mississippi River barge system to transport ag commodities. So my question is, what would you do as the Secretary of Agriculture to improve the infrastructure in the United States?
Sure. Great question. Obviously, the one advantage we have in this great country, not only can we produce it, but we've got wonderful logistics system where we can move these products around the world. That's a huge advantage. Brazilians have a great productive capacity as well, but their logistics network is not nearly as sophisticated as ours is. Not only does that mean rail, road, but as you mentioned, waterways. And the great news is the president has proposed a very significant, very costly infrastructure program. And we're going to be vigorous in making sure his people know that the waterways of shipment across the country, both inland through our river and barge network, as well as our ports on the coast, are very, very important to the ag industry. So I look forward to communicating that, having the facts and the data where the president and his team can understand that the infrastructure dollars need to go to enhance the productive capacity. That goes right to trade. If we can move those products to our coastline for export, then that makes us more effective. We can sell those products so we can grow up more than we can consume, and we can keep growing and keep thriving and prospering. So great question about the waterways, and you are blessed in Iowa to enjoy many of those, as much of the Corn Belt and much of the states do. We've got great system of water logistics as well as rail and roads. So we want to continue to make it even better. Thanks.
Let's go to Colorado, to the Greeley FFA chapter, hoping we have our audio addressed. Please ask a question of the secretary, and then if you would your microphone back on.
So my name is Michaela Fenton, and I'm from the Greeley West FFA chapter here in Greeley, Colorado. Our town is traditionally a very big farming town and has recently grown into a big urban development. We have 352 members that have often never even seen a farm, and we're trying to reach out and educate people. But a lot of times we get asked about sustainability. How are we going to feed that double world population? So we were wondering if on the government level, how are you guys answering and both solving those issues and that up to that question?
Okay, of sustainability. Question before you sit down. You've got 352 members in the FFA chapter, but how many students in your there?
I'm sorry?
How many students in the high school?
In our high school, we have about 1,700 students.
So that is a wonderful students in your high school, 350. What you just described is really a great opportunity for you all who've had real agricultural experience to help these others to come about. That's the great thing about FFA. I've seen urban chapters all over the country that help tell the story about agriculture to maybe students who've not had the opportunity to grow up on a farm or even be on a farm, but to see the leadership capacity and also the environmental stewardship, all those things. You mentioned sustainability. That's part of it. I tell the story about the fact growing up as a young person, my father always told me, even as a young boy growing up on a farm, son, if you take care of the land, it'll take care of you. That was our productive capacity. But then our stewardship capacity is even greater than that. He said, whether we own it or we rent it, our responsibility is to leave it better than we found it. Isn't that really our responsibility for the earth as a whole? Whether the products we use, as this question here in Leesburg talked about, or how we do the land, whether we use cover crops, no-till, and whether we use water resources very carefully, only using what we need. The best kind of farmer is those people who take just what they need to produce what they can in that area. And I think as FFA members, we learn that, we communicate that, and the public at large has a much better confidence in our level, in our heart, about being stewards of the land and stewards of their food. And I think it's a great opportunity to know that. I applaud you for having such a large percentage of your student body in FFA. You must have a great leader, FFA leader there, do you? Are you offline?
Oh, there you go.
Oh, I said we have quite a few, so definitely great leaders around here.
Okay, well, let's give them applause. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that. We're going to come right back here to Indiana, and I've got the second row here. And so I see a young lady with her hand up, and if you would come up and pose a question to the secretary, that would be great.
My name's Emily Jones. I hail from the Greenfield Central FFA chapter, and this is my 5th year with the chapter. And my question to you, Mr. Secretary, is under the new presidency of Trump, how do you foresee the agriculture market and trade moving forward with other countries?
You're a little garbled on the real part of the question that I didn't hear. Can you repeat that, please?
Under the new presidency of Trump, how do you foresee the agriculture market and trade moving forward with other countries?
Well, I think President Trump is quite a negotiator. I think it's evidence this past week when he talked about looking to renew NAFTA. Overall, NAFTA has been very good for agriculture, but there are some areas in where we can improve. And when he communicated to the president of Mexico, the president of Canada, that we wanted a free trade, but a fair trade. And since 1994, there were some adjustments that could be made based on different technologies, different products, and things like that. So I've got a lot of confidence. This president understands that agriculture in the United States is so productive that we can grow much more than we can consume, and it rises and falls on the ability to trade that. And that's what the essence of trade is. We do agriculture in the U.S. great, and what we need to do is use those products as tools of peace around the world. Our new motto at USDA is do right and feed everyone. And that's what we want to do, not only here domestically, not in just schools like Monroe, but around the world as high school students sit in different places of the world that don't have that same opportunity for good, nutritious meals across the world. So we look forward to trading across the world, and I'll be on the road a lot of times right there helping us to sell our U.S. products.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And maybe just a follow-up, how would you gauge, as you have traveled around the country and really around the world, how would you gauge the demand, if you will, for U.S. agricultural products, whether it's dried milk from Wisconsin or beef from Texas or fruits and vegetables from the West Coast?
Well, the demand is great, and the good news is that people around the world trust American products. They trust that USDA stamp is that good housekeeping seal of approval. Unfortunately, though, food and tariffs and regulations and barriers are used as a weapon in many parts of the country and many parts of the world, and we suffer from that at periods of time. You've got a lot of Chinese that would love American beef, but right now they're not allowed into the country. That's one of the top priorities on our agenda right now, is to negotiate with the Chinese to get U.S. beef into China. And I'm convinced when those Chinese taste our good U.S. beef, they're going to want more and more of it. So that's the purpose of trade, is to take what we do exceptionally well, which is U.S. agriculture, and trade it around the world.
Mr. Secretary, great looking group of young people in the room with you. I'm going to come right back there to CS Monroe and ask for a next question from where you're located in Leesburg, right there with your hand up.
Hi, Secretary Perdue. My name is Riley Toohill. It seems to me, based on the USDA website, that the only climate change solutions are posted are based on crop cover management. How else are you going to help create solutions to climate change?
Okay. I think this question was right about climate change and what are we going to do at USDA to deal with climate change. Obviously, I've lived a long time and I've seen the climate change. In fact, we see it change sometime from day to day. If you know the storms that just came through some of the Midwest, the climate is changing. What do we do in U.S. agriculture to contribute to the productivity? I think, again, we've got to look after water. We've got to look after our soil, which are the basics of our productive capacity to continue to feed the world and even increase the world by 50% over just the next few years. And in climate change, when we do smart things like cover crops and where we do things like preventing runoff, where we use precision agriculture, where we do not use more fertilizer and more products that are needed so we can protect our waterways, whether it be the Great Lakes and the restoration product there, or the Chesapeake Bay, or even the tributaries that contribute into the Mississippi, the Great Mississippi River. What do we do that makes good, sound sense? My sense is that American farmers are some of the best stewards and the best conservationists of the land that we have in the nation. And we need to let them do that in a way, teach them better skills. That's why research is such a big part of USDA, and helping our land grant universities teach us better ways to preserve what we have today, the soil and the water, the air, all those kind of things, whether it be on better utilization of water, better input utilization through any commercial issues that are put on the crops, and how we can do more with less in that regard. All those kind of stewardship things, I think, help us as we relate to the environment and how we can preserve and do our part in American agriculture to make sure that we're good stewards of the environment.
Let's switch back to Wisconsin. Claire, do you have another question for Secretary Perdue?
Hi, my name is Caleb Green, and I am actually one of the state vice presidents for Wisconsin Association of FFA. And seeing as I myself didn't grow up on a farm and don't have that background as many FFA members do, what do you think FFA members such as myself are, what do you think their background or their roles are in FFA and agriculture?
That's a good question. We've talked about that some before. I think the great thing about agriculture, it's very open and very inclusive as far as having people that didn't necessarily have the advantage of growing up on a farm. I was one of those that did, and I think it instilled in me a work ethic. You know, you can't plant a crop in September and expect to harvest it in November. So the timeliness and the agricultural cycle of life is very, very important. But that's the way, that's true in all of life. We got to do things in a timely fashion in order that we get the right results. But the fact is that you're a member of FFA. I think I heard you say you were vice president. You're in a leadership position there. Not having grown up on a farm doesn't disqualify you from learning more about it and telling the story of agriculture. You may even be more persuasive, not being a farm kid yourself. You might be able to be more effective in going out there and telling others, I didn't know this, but this is what I found out. We want to be truth tellers. We want to be fact-finding, data-driven, customer-focused kind of people that understand we've got a stewardship responsibility for a safe, abundant, affordable food supply across the country. And FFA helps us contribute that. I think also, young people, you see the aging of the American farmer. And I think to encourage you all to get into agricultural careers, to begin that, I think there's a great future in that. So I hope you'll learn from your colleagues there. Maybe look at some of your friends there who may have opportunities for you to be on the farm and to learn from that. But also, you can be a very credible advocate for agriculture from your perspective there, having been a non-farm FFA member.
Well, and Mr. Secretary, with some of the studies that are being done to indicate the careers and jobs that are available in agriculture every year that are going unfilled because we don't have enough young people entering those ag-related careers, it would seem as though we have opportunities for young people from both the farm as well as a non-farm background. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. There's so many ag careers in so many different directions that do not require a farm background in that way. So, as I said, it's very open and inclusive. And, you know, as you can see from all the female members of FFA, there's no gender discrimination, no racial discrimination. FFA is a great family that helps all of us be better and to do better and feed everyone.
Well, and speaking of young ladies in FFA, let's go back to Dover, New Hampshire, where I think we have a good representative of chapter officers, and ask them to pose the next question.
Hi, my name is Catherine Pelletier. I currently serve as secretary for the chapter, and I am sorry if you're going to have a bell ring. The school is almost over. The bell might ring on us. But my question is how do you think you can expand agricultural education in smaller states like New Hampshire?
Okay. Agriculture is important in every state. That's a good thing. You may not be as big as Iowa or Colorado or Indiana or others, but I can tell you those people who depend on agriculture in New Hampshire is very, very important, whether it's helping to lead an organic movement there or look for other hydroponic ways to grow food. We're going to see more challenges of growing food in non-traditional areas, and New Hampshire is a great example of that. So become innovative. Don't, you know, we have to grow where we're planted. We can't wish that we were somewhere else. I wish I was in Indiana. Wish I was in Iowa. Wish I was in Colorado. I'm here in New Hampshire for a purpose, and we're going to be the very best that we can there. So grow where you're planted and thrive where you're started there. And you might can be responsible for resolving some very difficult issues of how we feed a growing multi-billion-dollar population across the globe in just a few years.
Mr. Secretary, I'm fairly new to Twitter, but I think that the tagline, grow where you're planted, might just start going viral among some of the young people in this room and on this telecast. So thank you for those comments. Let's go back to Hudson, Iowa, and ask for the next question from our friends in Iowa.
Hi, I'm Casey Herring for the Hudson FFA chapter, and this is my first year in FFA. And my question for you is, 42.2 million Americans live in insecure households, and I was just wondering what steps are you going to take to address this issue?
I think American agriculture has taken great steps in that our food supply in the United States is the most abundant, the safest, and the most affordable of anywhere in the world. When you think of the percentage of income that Americans spend on their food supply, and it's better than anywhere else in the world. Thank you to the productive capacity of our American farmers and the whole food chain, the processors or wherever. So I think USDA is saying the farmers of America, primarily the producers of America, are doing more than their share in that, and we ought to be very proud of the part they're having in helping to feed the world, and particularly our citizens here in the United States.
Well, you mentioned climate change a bit earlier. I was in Colorado last week and made it out of Denver right before the big snowfall of late April, early May. So let's go back to our students in Greeley at Greeley High School and ask a question from.
Hi, Mr. Secretary. My name is Allison Tovar, and I'm the secretary for our district. I was just wondering how much land in agriculture regions should be kept as natural habitats to suit our growing population and changing climate?
We had a little disturbance here.
Mr. Secretary, we can go in Colorado. I think the question is around natural habitat and how much of that should be set aside in agriculture.
Yes.
Thank you. I think Mickey Mouse or Donald packed into our system here today, but we're getting a little walking there. There may be some people are still shooting after they finish. Mark, if you will
go mute. Thank you.
If you will rephrase the question, I'll do my best to answer.
Mr. Secretary, let me see if I can restate the question. Our member from Colorado was asking about natural habitat and your views on the need to set aside natural acres that would be devoted to natural habitat versus production agriculture, and your views on that.
Sure. Obviously, America's vast, broad, different geography, different topography all over. And the benefit of that is in most all areas, we've got places of land that probably do not need to be tilled. And we're looking for CRP policies, the Conservation Reserve Program, that would allow people maybe to take portions of fields, not necessarily the whole field, and those that are least productive and those that could be good for wildlife and not farm, and set those aside rather than having to require the whole field. So there are policies we're looking at right now that would be helpful for wildlife, helpful for our natural resources, helpful for cleaner water that maybe we can do. And farmers typically know where their least productive parts of the field are. The good part about data and the good part about drones and the good part about the technology we have today is that many times we can determine where our productive parts of the field are and where the least productive, and maybe we should encourage farmers and producers to leave out those least productive, and frankly, they could make more money that way.
Mark, we have time for about two more questions.
Okay, let me ask some of our young people from here in Indiana. Table right there in the back. That hand went up first.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary. My name is Kaylee Brunsting, and I hail from right here in Indianapolis at the Star Academy FFA chapter. I would like to thank you personally because as part of one of our USDA grants at our school, we just bought a beehive, so thank you. But I would ask the question of there is $165 billion worth of food that is wasted every year in our country, and if there is anything related to food waste policies or just different measures that you think that you are going to take that you see in your administration. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's a great point. And what I'm going to do is challenge you and all the smart FFA members across this nation to help me solve that situation. That it's really a tragedy that we would have such a nation where we could waste so much food, whether it be in our schools or our homes or our restaurants. You go in, it's just sad for me to see many times when we go and we're served a huge meal and we may stir around and consume a fourth or a third of that and then turn the rest back in. So I would love, Mark, to challenge for you all that to be a national FFA project of how we can deal with school waste. And I can assure you the Secretary of Agriculture will take that very seriously and look for you to be an army of solutions, problem solvers out there, that it'd be tremendous if we could resolve that very question, that very issue in the next few years.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. We certainly understand that challenge. I think globally there's about 1.3 billion tons of food that are wasted every year, and that would play a substantial role in feeding everyone. So that's a challenge that we look forward to taking on here at National FFA. Thank you for that. We have time for one more question. I'd like to take it from right there at home where you are, Mr. Secretary, at CS Monroe and Leesburg. Who would be next on the agenda there? Yes, young lady right there by the Secretary.
Hi, my name is Jovia. I'm the historian here at the FFA Monroe Technology Center chapter. My quick question is, how do you plan to accommodate to President Trump's budget that is threatening to close some of the agriculture programs?
Sure. Good question. As you know, President Trump in Office of Managing Budget has submitted a budget for USDA, as he has for all of government. We've had no really input or impact. I've not in that budget thus far. These FFA guys are all good civic government people there. They know that the president and the executive branch proposes a budget, and then who appropriates the dollars? Congress appropriate. They're the appropriators. So we will take President Trump's budget, and we will defend that budget. I was governor of Georgia for about 8 years, and it was during that period of time from 2003 to 2011. Remember the Great Recession, when a lot of people's revenues were not growing, and 5 of the 8 budgets that I had to present to the General Assembly had less money than the year before. So that means we do more with less, and we'll do that. In any organization, large or small, whether it's the big FFA or this chapter, you can always find a little more efficiencies and a little more effectiveness. So we're going to do that, and we're going to manage to the budget that we're given. I'm implementers. I'm an administrator. I'm a manager as Secretary of Agriculture. So we're going to advocate for those programs that are most effective, help them understand if there are places that we can do without. We'll communicate that honestly and transparently, but we're going to fight vigorously for the needs of research programs and young people and education and those kind of things that make the most sense for the future of agriculture. If there are things that we can do without, we'll let them know that, but by and large, we're going to take the money that we're given and make the very most of it that we can, and do as well as we can in that regard. Obviously, I'm concerned in looking at a $20 trillion budget deficit. I feel like it's immoral for my generation to kick that over to your generation and your children's generation even. So I think we have to be serious about resolving the the budget deficit and the budget crisis and the debt crisis. I think the proposals that President Bush has for the economy and job growth will help us grow out of that. But not only do we need to have in growth, we need to be wise stewards of our taxpayers' dollars so we get every value we can out of that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Secretary, from a farm boy in Nebraska to a farm boy in Georgia, we would like to thank you, and also on behalf of the 650,000 FFA members from around the country, your service to our country, your commitment to young people, and your interest in this next generation of agricultural leaders is much appreciated, and we appreciate you joining us today. Now, we've had a handful of FFA members from around the country that have been able to interact with you today. We have this little gathering every October in Indianapolis where we'll have somewhere like 65,000 in attendance at our National FFA Convention and Expo. And I have a feeling there's a few more FFA members that would like to hear from you. And I would like to, on behalf of FFA, extend an invitation to you to join us between October 25th and 28th right here in Indianapolis. What do you say?
Thank you, Mark, for the personal invitation. I heard that little party you all have in October in Indianapolis, and I've always wanted to go. So I was actually in Indianapolis in 1980 as a young farmer spokesman for agriculture. So with the Landco program that was back then. So I look forward to coming back to Indianapolis and partying with all you 65,000 people.
Well, Mr. Secretary, we'll have quite a party, and especially if you join us here in Indiana. So again, thank you for your very frank responses, for your interaction with young people today. On behalf of all of us in this room and around the country, we want to extend our welcome to you to join us anytime. Let's show Secretary Perdue our appreciation.